Horizon Jensen Suji reaction, and this is why the FBI killed this innocent woman. Tales from the Bottle by the channel Quicksir. Tales from the Bottle returns to bring you the tragic tale of the Weaver family and the siege of Ruby Ridge. What? FBI killed this innocent woman? What the hell? Quicksir, I reacted, I think, one video from this about some World War II guy who was on meth or something. That was really funny video. So this is probably gonna be good. Obviously it says near 500,000 subscribers, so probably it's a good channel. So yeah, remember people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. I guess check out the reaction. There's a link in the description. Check out the cast, but please check out the end cards. And yeah, let's watch this one.
In 1992, a string of federal agency fuck-ups would lead to the senseless deaths of the Weaver family in the infamous Ruby Ridge siege. Their crime? Well, basically nothing. So how does something like that happen? Buckle up, because we're in for one hell of a story. Randy Weaver...
Wait a minute, entire Weaver family or just the woman?
...was a former Iowa factory worker and U.S. Army combat engineer who moved to Idaho with his family in the 1980s. They wanted to escape what they saw as a corrupted world, and his wife Vicky had recurring dreams of an impending apocalypse, so it sounds like they were religious nuts or something, and that always makes for an interesting story. They began selling their possessions, learned how to live without electricity, bought 20 acres of land on Ruby Ridge, and began to build a cabin, which is very admirable. One time our electricity went down for a few hours and I had to be sectioned in a mental hospital.
Yeah.
Troubles began when Randy had a...
At this day and age, thinking, living without electricity, I can't even think of that. It's just whenever electricity goes out, I'm like, what the hell?
...with his neighbor over a $3,000 land deal. Weaver won the ensuing lawsuit and received an additional $2,100 in court costs and damages. His neighbor was so pissed off that he wrote letters to the FBI, the Secret Service, and the county sheriff, claiming that Weaver had threatened to kill the Pope, the President, and the Governor of Idaho, so he couldn't sort his problems like a fucking man, and he had to go behind Randy's back and be a dirty snake. That's properly pissed me off now. You dirty, good-for-nothing rat bastard. What a fucking dead-set cunt.
Seriously.
In 1985, the FBI and the Secret Service...
Is his neighbor Eric Cartman? Because what the fuck?
...service began investigations over these claims, and poor old Randy and Vicky were interviewed.
FBI started doing investigation because some guy claimed that his neighbor is trying to kill Pope and the President. Do FBI understand the meaning of having something being far-fetched or something? Really, somebody can just claim you're going to investigate like that. I mean, investigate from the, I think from the top or something, just, from the far distance. Just check if the guy has any record, what is guy, ever caught doing anything. If not, then this is stupid.
For 2 hours. The Secret Service came to believe that Randy was a member of the Aryan Nations and that he had a large weapons cache at his residence. Randy denied this and he was let go. It was noted that Randy associated with Frank Kumnick, who was known to associate with members of the Aryan Nations. So that's the basis of this. He knew a guy who knew a guy.
So according to FBI, you have to be very careful with who you meet, because if that guy has connection with anything, you have connection with them. Is that it? That is so effed up.
Compelling evidence, all right. By this point, the Weavers were well aware of a conspiracy against them. They filed an affidavit in the county courthouse stating...
Yeah, seriously, the guys already left the city because they were already like, the apocalypse is near, corruption in the city, gave up the electricity. They are already thinking all these things, and at the same time, FBI comes calling to you like, are you a white supremacist? What are these people supposed to think now?
That their personal enemies were plotting to provoke the FBI into attacking the family. They even wrote a letter to the President Ronald Reagan saying that someone may have sent him a threatening letter under a forged signature pretending to be them. In 1986, the ATF had a separate investigation.
Hold up, this is actually a massive crime. I mean, if his neighbor is doing all this thing, then neighbors should be, royally screwed. Let's just say you can't just forge a letter and threaten the president because just because you want to screw over your neighbor. You just committed a massive crime now. Why is FBI not investigating that?
Into Frank Kumnick and his association with the Aryan nations. When they first became aware of Randy Weaver, an undercover ATF informant posing as a weapons dealer was introduced to Weaver through Kumnick. Over the next 3 years, Weaver and the informant met several times, and according to the informant, Weaver sold him 2 illegal sawed-off shotguns. Weaver eventually learned he was a spy when an FBI informant outed him, which is, I mean, they work for
The
the same
hell?
government. That's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
The ATF tried to use the shotgun charges as blackmail against Randy to force him into becoming an informant for the
Ah.
investigation into the Aryan nations, but Randy refused to become a snitch.
Oh, now I understand. So basically, FBI, that guy who warned Randy that that guy's a snitch. He warned him because he knows that FBI is trying to screw over him. FBI wants to, FBI knows that this guy is nothing but just, some small time dealer of weapons here and there, like just sells a shotgun here and there. Like he's like basically nobody. He's no threat to anybody, but he just sells a weapon here and there. But that guy knew that FBI is going to use that to use him against Aryan Brotherhood just to take them down and ruin his whole life in the process, because obviously FBI doesn't care about him. FBI only cares about the result of the taking down Aryan Brotherhood or whatever. So that guy basically realized that he felt sorry for this guy and basically warned him like that guy's a snitch. So FBI snitched over their own guys just because that guy realized that he's getting screwed. So his neighbor is an a-hole who spread lies just to screw him over. FBI is like, why the hell not? We could use him. We could take advantage of him. Let's just screw him over. That's just effed up, man.
Fucking legend. Absolutely. What a lad. Chalk it down. One of the boys. So the ATF filed the gun charges and also claimed he was a bank robber with criminal convictions, which is just a lie. They just made that up. So stay salty, ATF, you fucking cunts. Absolutely
Seriously.
not one of the boys. So Weaver's trial date was February the 20th. However, the probation officer sent Weaver a
This is the
letter.
thing that I've noticed in lots of scenarios. I've heard of lots of stories like this where FBI, ATF, all these massive federal agencies basically screw over innocent people just because they think they're the right side of history, just because they are looking at the greater good. Screwing over this guy is nothing if it means the taking down Aryan Brotherhood, so they are apparently good guys. So screwing over one guy means nothing. So this is a pattern I've seen a lot of times. Like either become our informant or we'll take you down, even though we know you haven't done anything much yet. We just have you on bogus charges like just selling some gun or something.
That stated it was March the 20th. Obviously, he then missed the trial date and was now considered a fugitive, and the US Marshal Services became involved.
How is
Randy
this
was aware
possible?
of this, but instead of fleeing, he stayed in his home at Ruby Ridge and threatened to resist any attempt to take him by force. And you can't blame him, really. I mean, if you put yourself in his shoes, like you're fairly sure there's some sort of conspiracy against you, an informant tried to drag you into some sort of investigation, and they gave you the wrong fucking date for your trial.
How is that
Weaver had
possible,
an
man?
intense distrust of the government and believed he wouldn't get a fair trial if he appeared in court. His
That is true,
magistrate
actually.
erroneously told him that
After seeing all these things, how these federal agencies are being an a-hole and trying to screw over this guy, even I don't believe that he would have gotten a fair trial.
if he lost the trial, the government would take away his children and his land, leaving
Yeah.
his wife homeless. So what could he do? In 1992, the US Marshal Service had made a series of attempts to get Weaver to surrender peacefully. They negotiated through third parties, but Weaver still thought he'd just lose everything if he surrendered. Eventually, surveillance teams were dispatched and hidden cameras set up around the residence to monitor the Weaver family. During this time, the threat that Randy Weaver posed became greatly exaggerated. Somehow, enforcement came to believe that he was a Green Beret. that he would shoot anyone on
Somehow.
sight, that he booby-trapped his property and had tunnels dug in and around the area. It was even
There is no somehow. These are those salty ass federal agents who hyping this up. How much of an a-hole are they, man? Seriously, they're still trying to screw him over. Isn't he screwed already? Man, this is effed up. So basically, FBI is gonna kill this innocent woman and God knows who, and the people who try to screw over this guy, and the people who are actually responsible for hyping all this thing up, making an innocent guy sound like as a terrorist or something. Those guys are not gonna get punished. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
reported that he fired shots at a helicopter doing a flyover for a television show, despite the pilot just saying that it didn't happen. And at this point, you wonder how many more fuck-ups can law enforcement make? Like, it's just been non-stop blunders every step of the way.
These are not fuck ups and blunders. These are actually calculated things that these federal agencies are doing to screw over this guy just because he wouldn't play game with them, I guess. He wouldn't become a snitch for them.
It's retarded how much stuff they got wrong, and we haven't even got to the worst of it. Like, who the fuck was in charge? Because in my mind, it's between Homer Simpson, a honey badger wearing a suit, and literally no one. Like, everyone was just kind of left to their own devices. On August 21st, 1992, 6 marshals were sent to scout the area for suitable places to ambush and arrest Weaver. They were properly decked out in camouflage, night vision goggles, and M16s. 3 marshals set up an
Really? Are you trying to capture Osama bin Laden? What the fuck?
observation post on the ridge, and another 3 made up the recon team. At some point, they threw a rock at the Weaver cabin to test the reaction of their dogs. This provoked the dogs, obviously, and 2 figures emerged from the cabin. Kevin Harris, a friend of Weaver's, and Sammy Weaver, Weaver's 14-year-old son. They followed one of the dogs in hopes of being led to a game animal, as the cabin had run out of meat. The 3 marshals retreated, but the dog would eventually find them. The dog ran up to the marshals playfully, whereupon one of them shot and killed the dog. Sammy Weaver then yelled, "You shot my dog, you son of a bitch," which is as good a war cry as any, and fired at the marshals. One of the marshals came out of the woods firing his M16 and hit Sammy in the arm. Kevin Harris then shot this marshal in the chest and killed him. Another marshal opened fire, causing Harris to duck for cover and Sammy to retreat. The marshal then fired again, hitting Sammy in the back and knocking him to the ground. Harris managed to force the marshal to take cover and then checked on Sammy and found him dead. He then ran back to the Weaver cabin. After the incident, Randy, Vicky, and Harris retrieved Sammy's body and placed it in a guest cabin near the main cabin. The firefight and killing of a marshal set into action a 12-day siege where several hundred federal agents surrounded the house.
What the fuck? First of all, those marshals killed that dog. So the one of those kids, obviously Weaver kid, got pissed off. I mean, I can't blame him. And then obviously he shouldn't have shot back. But I mean, what happened to all the Second Amendment and protecting your fucking property and shit that Americans are constantly going on about? This is so effed up, man. This family is getting screwed over for what?
Special rules of engagement were drafted up for sniper teams, and by all accounts there were basically shoot-on-sight orders. Everyone was taken aback by them. An FBI negotiator said he was surprised and shocked, and that these were the most severe.
You know what? Even now, I'm convinced that there was a conspiracy, because this is not incompetence. This is nowhere near incompetence. This is calculated assassination. Why?
Rules of engagement he'd ever heard in his over 300 hostage situations. Another poor judgment call which would result in the loss of more lives. Before negotiators even arrived at the cabin, an FBI sniper shot and wounded Randy Weaver in the back as he was entering the cabin to visit his son's body. Randy, his 16-year-old daughter Sarah, Vicky, and Kevin Harris all ran back towards the house, where the same sniper fired another shot, which wounded Harris in the chest and killed Vicky. She was holding the Weaver's 10-month-old baby. Harris was so badly injured.
What the fuck? This is very pissing me off. What the fuck is this? First of all, FBI or anybody, there's a rule. If there are kids involved, you don't breach. And you don't shoot until you have completely perfect line of sight. If anybody's holding a kid, you don't shoot. This is one of the rules. What is happening here? This is pissing me off, man. Land of the free my ass. What is this shit?
He urged Randy to put him out of his misery. Facing an impending tactical assault, Weaver decided to surrender. Harris was removed in a stretcher and both men were arrested. Weaver's daughters were released to the custody of relatives. Both Weaver and Harris would be charged with a variety of charges, but it was very clear most of the wrongdoing lay with the government agents. Kevin Harris was acquitted of all charge and would later be awarded a $380,000 settlement in a civil suit for damages. Randy Weaver was acquitted of all charges except the missing his original court date. He was fined $10,000 and spent 21 months in prison. He would later file a wrongful death suit for $200 million, but accepted an out-of-court settlement for $100,000 and $1 million for each of his 3 daughters. What an absolute disaster for everyone involved. I take it back the joke I made about the questionable leadership. It clearly wasn't just incompetence, no. I'm fairly sure it was Satan himself leading this operation. That's the only thing that can explain the downright malice behind every action here. Like after a...
Wait a minute. Maybe I was so pissed I didn't focus so much. So daughters died too. Is that it? Because he said, daughters were given to the relatives, weren't they? So any daughters died? Oh, for fuck's sake, I hate this.
While you can't really say they're accidents anymore. If your dog keeps shitting on the carpet for months after you taught him not to do that...
Yeah, that's not an accident.
It's not an accident anymore. He's not confused. He's shitting on the carpet because he wants to shit on the goddamn carpet. And because fuck you. What a long fucking video. It took me ages to do this. So if you liked it, please leave me a like and a comment.
God. I've never come across any video that pissed me off this much. What the fuck was this, man? Where did this come from? And what, nobody in charge of FBI, anybody in the command structure ever got investigated, like why this happened, why was all this order were given, why the extreme like shoot on sight orders? These were not some terrorists with assault rifles. Why would you do that? This is just way too much, man. Alright people, that was why FBI killed this woman. Alright, I'll see you next time.